The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mind Garden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. It's another week. It's another Sandy and Toddcast. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Todd. And boy, do we have a fun one today, part 2 of our Jason Offutt interview. And he was just a complete joy to talk to. I love him.
Actually, I can't wait till we get him back on and we can kind of reminisce about not only this interview, but also talk about a lot of the other stuff that he talks about in his books, because he's got a lot of books out there.
Oh, yeah. And one great thing when you know it's a great interview, when you know it's a great person, is the end of the interview leaves you with more questions than you started with.
Exactly. And this one certainly did. It's season 4, episode 5. He is our Leonard Nimoy in search of Jason Offutt, part 2. And it's next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
Crowds, arguments, loud noises, narcissists, energy vampires. Does that seem scary to you? It can to an empath. Sandy and Todd from the Sandy and Toddcast invite you to join them for a new podcast, the Empathicary Podcast. These two empaths know exactly what it's like, and they'd like to share their stories, knowledge, and ideas with you. Dive deep into the world of the empath. The Empathicary Podcast with Sandy and Todd. Find it anywhere you find your podcasts and like them on Facebook.
Broadcasting from 2 very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day, all while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
The Sandy and Toddcast. Here, wait a minute. I got to move and turn that on and then turn this up. The Sandy and Toddcast.
Yay! That was wonderful.
Too much work for me now that I'm sitting in the chair with the leg up and all that stuff. The squeaky chair.
Now that you're an invalid.
Can't do anything. How you doing?
I'm good. We were just saying how much we miss each other because we haven't really talked much. It's been a crazy busy week.
Wait a minute. No, I didn't say I missed you. You said you missed me. Now, I may miss you, but I never said it.
Yeah, but it's the little things. You just kind of moaned, and that usually means, I miss you too. So
moaning means I miss you? Let me write that down here.
It's been a crazy week for both of us. I have been swamped with work. You have been swamped with work and going to your physical therapy, and you went and got your driver's license renewed. Ooh. Yay! And so I got mine done a couple of weeks ago, and your birthday
is today.
Oh my God, wait. Last week, we celebrated my birthday with that amazing William Shatner video, which I still watch like all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it was hilarious. But today is another very special day because almost exactly 1 year to the day, 1 year apart, you were born, Todd Deering.
That's correct.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I
love
appreciate
you.
That. Do you?
I do. And I wish I was technically advanced because then I could play something for you, but I can't. And it would have kind of ruined it if I said, hey, Todd, here's something to play for me.
Right. So I did it for myself. I decided.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
Ooh.
That's all I
right
got
up
for
your alley.
No, it's right up your alley. But that's a different story.
Let me just say happy birthday to you. I really do love you so much. And we got a great compliment the other day from one of my friends who said that he really loves our podcast. And so I can't think of anybody that I would rather be on this journey with than you, my BFF. So I love you. Happy birthday.
Wonderful. Well, what are we going to... I just, I don't think much of birthdays. I'm not going to celebrate
that's
today.
That's why I kind of play it up a lot too, because I know how to push your buttons.
Yeah.
I know how to get you going.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 2 years of love and fun. Little over 2 years now.
Is it really?
Yeah. You say that every time. Like you
I just can't
keep track
believe it.
of
I can't believe it. It
2
just
years.
seems too long, too much. Time to move on. I don't do anything for 2 years.
Time to move on.
I barely in my life kept a job for more than a year and a half.
Well, look, we've broken records. Wait till June. I can't wait. I sent you a picture of cheese the other day.
And here's the thing, folks. It is for me to get a picture of cheese from her. It's just nothing special because it happens constantly. It's like whenever she sees cheese at all, I get a snapshot of it. Like for some reason, like I'm going to look at it and go, "Oh my God, it's cheese! Look at this, everybody, cheese!" I don't do that.
And now Damon Jacobs from Apps Adirondack Park Paranormal Society, I've got him doing cheese things too. So, cheese is great. Who doesn't like cheese? I actually gained 2 pounds on vacation in Wisconsin last year from eating so much cheese. But, it's how it goes.
Well, by now that's out of your system, although it does set up shop for a while.
June and Nuts on Clark. Don't forget
Nuts on Clark. Yeah, nuts and cheese. Nothing better than that mixture for your colon.
Popcorn cheese. So speaking of Wisconsin, that reminds me, do you remember when we were doing the Amityville Revisited week a couple weeks ago,
yep.
and we were talking about the 2005 remake of the Amityville Horror House and how much we did not like it?
Right.
Well, I actually came across something, which I thought was kind of ironic, but I came across something the other day that I don't know if you know. You might know it, though, because you know a lot. But the actual house where they filmed that movie was filmed in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was filmed at Silver Lake, on the shores of Silver Lake in Salem, Wisconsin. Now, I'm not sure exactly where Salem, Wisconsin is.
Well, Silver Lake, is it spelled with a Y or an I?
I.
Okay, so Silver Lake is around a town called Wautoma. We were kind of out there when we went to Ed Gein's place.
Oh, okay. So not that far, really.
No.
And it's a beautiful old house. The house that they used is a very historic old house called Oakwood Manor. Now, I don't know if that's haunted or not, but it actually is a gorgeous home. And the thing about it is, what I thought was interesting was in order to film the movie there, they built an entirely different facade onto the front of this house.
Wow.
Yeah. So you don't really see most of the house from the outside because it's actually the facade that they built. And I think that anything they did inside, obviously, was the actual house. But I just thought that was interesting because, A, it wasn't that far from you. And B, I would have had no idea that they would take a house, which is a gorgeous old historic home, and sort of transform it by building an entire facade onto it.
Well, here's something interesting. Couple things. Looked it up. Silver Lake, the one you're talking about, is not the one that I thought. There's another Silver Lake down near Kenosha, which is south of Milwaukee. So
where
that's
the cheese castle
correct.
is.
Back to the cheese, you bet. But that's where Salem is. It's actually on around a couple of lakes, Hooker Lake and Silver Lake. So that's where that was. But you know what else I found out since we did that episode? So I did some research on the house that they used in the original Amityville horror, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I had gone off on a huge rant about how they ruined the house now because they tried to change it so it didn't look like the house in the movie.
Right.
Remember I said they changed the pitch of the roof and they changed the chimney? I was actually wrong about that.
Oh.
For the movie, they built the facade with the barn roof and the special windows, and they changed up the chimney so that it looked like what was in the movie. So they took a house that was basically very similar and actually built a new roof on the top of it for the filming. So they did the same thing.
Isn't it amazing how they can do that, though?
Yeah.
Because I would have never known.
No, you can't tell by looking at it.
No, I went back and looked at pictures from the 2005 movie, and I'm like, I would have never known that was the house that it actually truly was.
Right.
I just think that's really cool what they can do in movies these days. I mean, we thought that The Exorcist, the filming of The Exorcist for its time was amazing. But these days they can do, and I'm not talking about like CGI computer.
Yeah, you
stuff.
can do
I'm
anything
talking
nowadays.
But I'm just talking about how that they could actually like build something on top of something and turn it into totally something different. That's just pretty amazing.
Those Hollywood folks are pretty smart. They can get a lot done if they want to. Yeah.
They're pretty good. I don't know any of them, but I'm sure they're very good. I had this one other thing. I got to tell you about this because I thought it was really interesting. I came across this. I was on cultofweird.com. And sometimes I just go on Cult of Weird and I look around for some weird stuff,
Because she's cult-like.
Because I am cult-like. And speaking of cult or occult, they actually have rules for Ouija boards on there, which I thought was interesting. You guys, I'll put the link in the show notes for you. Honestly, it's a really cool website. And I didn't know about it until you told me about it. And now I go on there every once in a while because they have some really interesting stuff on there. There's all kinds of, it's cryptozoology, aliens, everything you can imagine. Paranormal, serial killers, true crime, everything like that. But anyways, I saw this article that I thought was really interesting about the spiritualist at the turn of the century, 1910s, early 1920s. His name was Thomas Lynn Bradford. And he became really obsessed with proving that there was an afterlife, like obsessed with it. And he really wanted to prove the skeptics wrong. So what he did was he took out an ad in the paper and he asked for somebody to help him with his experiment.
Oh, God. What does he ask?
Not saying what it was or anything. So this woman named Ruth Doran, who was not a skeptic, not a believer, just never gave any of this any thought. So she was almost like a clean blank slate.
Right.
She answered the ad. So what he did, this is so insane. What he did was on February 5th, 1921, he sealed off his bedroom, blew out the pilot light, and laid down on his bed to breathe in the fumes. And he basically killed himself. He committed suicide. He had left a note saying that this is what he did. This is why he did it. He wanted to prove that there was an afterlife and that he would come back and he would communicate with Ruth Doran. So a few days goes by, nothing happens. A week goes by, nothing happens. And I think it was about 12 days later that Ruth actually said that she felt this presence, and anybody who's investigated in the paranormal world or anybody who's got any experience with it knows that sometimes you can actually feel when the energy will change in a room.
Absolutely.
Something will change. And by day 12, she wasn't really expecting anything. She thought that this poor man had just decided to commit suicide to prove the skeptics wrong, and he was wherever he was at that point. But not only did she feel the presence, but she heard a male voice calling her name. And so it's sort of, to this day, it's sort of a little bit of a mystery as to whether or not Mr. Bradford actually did come back from the dead. But she is convinced, or was convinced at the time, I'm sure she's not here anymore, that she heard his voice calling out her name. And I just thought that was so interesting because the fact that somebody would go to those extremes to prove something like that, it's just fascinating to me.
I don't know if I would call it fascinating. I think there's a lot of things that I have interest in, but I'm not sure that any of the things that I have interest in would make me want to kill myself in order to prove them,
Right. Exactly.
What a dork.
We're talking complete obsession. And of course, this was right now, the spiritualist movement really took on prominence back in, I think, the 1860s. I think it was with the Fox sisters. Did you ever hear about the Fox sisters?
Yeah, I've heard that said before.
Yeah, and they sort of really started the whole spiritualism movement. But this was like 40, 50 years later. And the fact that he was that obsessed with that just really does kind of amaze me and fascinate me that someone would be that obsessed. That's the first time I've ever heard of anything like that.
I just I was just going to say, I haven't done a lot of research on spiritualism because for whatever reason, and listen, I mean, you and I both do investigations and try to communicate with spirits or energies or whatever it is.
Yep.
We're both skeptics, but something about spiritualism and the way they conducted themselves and conducted their, I don't want to call them experiments necessarily, but the way they kind of went about trying to figure stuff out really is kind of creepy.
It's very creepy. And I don't consider spiritualism to be the same kind of idea as maybe we look at it today. I think spiritualism back then, well, first of all, 95% of everything that people saw during seances and things back then were fake. They were people trying to fake the whole thing, which in and of itself is interesting to me because they would go to great lengths to try to make people believe in that. Of course, there was money involved back then too. But I think it was just a totally different. I think if you consider yourself spiritual today, I think it's a totally different thing than what it was back then. I think it's evolved so much since then because it was very creepy.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I realize it's old. A lot of the pictures you see from spiritualists and spiritualism are the black and white ones where everybody looks dead anyway. From that time period, they're always a little creepy. And I don't know, there's just something about it that just, and I've seen movies that were dramatic interpretations of things that went on that, didn't shed a very good light on it. So that gets in your mind. You're like, ooh, these guys seem a little bit creepy. And that's why seances in general. And I'd like to do a program on seances. I think that'd be great.
I think we should. Well, I'm going to try my first one in a couple months. I've been a little tentative about it, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I really need to try it to see if it's something that I can do. I'm a little tentative because I know how open I am. So I have to really take good measure. But I would love to do an entire episode on that. Maybe we can see if we can invite somebody who really has a lot of experience with it and talk to them about it because they're always sort of like, I don't know, mystical to me. Like just,
I want to talk to somebody who is not fake about it, who actually, has been involved in some that actually were real and had some sort of outcome, blah, blah, blah. But when you say, I feel like I need to try it, it's kind of like somebody, that's looking at hard drugs and they're like, well, I know it could be bad for me, but I really want to see what this experience is like. And then they overdose on the first one and they're dead.
I would be very careful. I really would be very careful because I am so tentative about it. But I think it's something that I need for my, just to kind of develop myself a little bit more. Be quiet. Be quiet.
I didn't feel anything in the black mist. And, we were holding hands at the seance and I felt a spook come into me. But, other than
You forgot dancing on the grave.
I try to forget that. I can't forget it. That's the problem.
I was very angry.
Ladies and gentlemen, come on and give a warm welcome to Cassandra and the Grave Dancers. Ladies and gentlemen, here they are. They come out, they do a little Motown song, and then they hit the bricks.
Maybe I'll take them on the road with me. So I just thought that was very interesting. Just a couple of things I came across this week in between work. You got to get your mind out of work once in a while and do some other stuff. So interesting stuff. Yeah.
I think next week we're going to talk a little bit about those SLS cameras that you and I have been messing around with a little bit. And so that'll be an interesting conversation. And maybe we'll try and find somebody to give us some more information on seances.
I think that would be great. Let's see what we can do. And I know everybody's interested in them because they're not your normal investigation type of stuff. They don't lean on the scientific side. They lean on the
personal experience
side. And so we always talk about the equipment that we have, but there are personal experiences that happen a lot. And so I think that would be really cool. Let's do it.
All right, let's do this now. Let's get into our podcast this week. He was a great guest, and we're happy to have him on the program. Season 4, Episode 5. He is our Leonard Nimoy in search of Jason Offutt, Part 2 on the Sandy and Toddcast. One of the books that I was checking out that I thought was really, really cool, Jason, was Chasing American Monsters. Over 250 creatures, cryptids, and hairy beasts. I'm going to put you on the spot here because I know there are 250 of them.
I don't know. I haven't read that yet.
I have that book.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the beast? The one, and again, this could be a tough question, but the one beast or weird thing out there that interests you the most? What's the one thing that if you had to get rid of everything else that is kind of interesting to you, the one thing that you'd still want to hang on to?
All right. So every creature in that book I found fascinating. Some I found silly. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I found all of them fascinating. However, the one I'm going to latch on to, and this might sound boring. Can you guess what it is?
Is it Bigfoot?
It's Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of a number of factors. One, look around the world. We've got Bigfoot / Sasquatch here in the United States, and they call it other things. We've got skunk ape, grass man, all sorts of different things. In North America, we also have a smaller Bigfoot in South America. We've got the wild man of the forest in Europe. We had a British Bigfoot, the Alma and the Almasti in Russia, the Yeren in China, the Orang Pindak in Malaysia, and islands in that area. There's a Bigfoot in Australia, the Yowie. Right. So on every single continent, dating back centuries before we apparently were able to communicate with each other around the world, people had reports of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
How the hell is that possible unless there's a Bigfoot?
There's something to this.
That's number one. Number two, there have been people put away in prison for crimes with less evidence than we have for there being a Bigfoot.
Very true.
That's a crazy statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And there have been a couple more deals I'm going to throw out here because this is, man, you hit me in my sweet spot.
Good.
You really did.
Hey.
We don't listen. We, as in the West, have never listened to indigenous peoples when they talk to us about legends or monsters or whatever creatures that they have going on. In the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the locals talked about a chimpanzee that was as big as a gorilla that would often walk on two legs, howl at the moon, sleep in nests like a gorilla, and was powerful enough to kill cheetahs. Okay, well, that was a cute story, the Western scientists said, until in 1998, they discovered the Billy, B-I-L-I, ape that was in the B-I-L-I Billy forest. And it was the creature that they were describing. Okay, so they didn't believe it until they saw it. It was the same with the mountain gorilla. It was the same with the the giant panda. The okapi. There were so many animals out there that Western science thought were absolute bunk that were true.
Right.
So we ignore Bigfoot. We ignore all of the Native American legends of Bigfoot. Of Bigfoot being a human tribe that a lot of Native American tribes believe in. And here's the other thing I'm leading to about another human tribe. There have been DNA samples taken in the United States, in Alberta, Canada, and in Russia of supposed Bigfoot. And what they come back with is it's human, but there's, some abnormalities. So I have a feeling that the Native Americans were right and that Bigfoot is another human tribe. And I think this DNA has shown that. It just gets ignored.
And
we're not going to invite him to the family dinner, but we'll wave at him when we drive by.
I watched these firsthand accounts by witnesses and people who have literally seen this creature, seen it. And you can see the fear in their eyes. You can hear their voice tremble. And you just know that it's not something that they've mistaken for a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. I mean, we here in New York, I'm in New York State, and we have Whitehall, New York, which is considered to be the Bigfoot capital of New York. It's about 2 hours northeast of where I am. I'm closer to Syracuse, in between Syracuse and Albany. And I'd love to get out there. There have been so many sightings out there by people who, if you watch them talk about their experiences. I went to a presentation by a Bigfoot hunter several years ago, and he had been in Whitehall. And the look on his face as he was telling his firsthand account of what he saw. I mean, there is no mistake that this man saw what he is telling you that he saw. And I love science. I am a fan of science, but I think science can only go so far. When you start denying the existence of things because it doesn't fit into your scientific box, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, there's an explanation for that. I mean, I feel this sort of thing because I work at a university and I know how things work.
Right.
There is an accepted way of things. And if you go against the accepted way of things, you might not get any grant money.
Right.
I've got some colleagues, some scientists who are friends of mine, and we talk about, things that interest us. And they're like, if somebody is going to discover a UFO or a ghost or a Sasquatch, it's going to be people like us, scientists. But we have to have 100% proof or we are never going to get grant money ever again.
Right.
I mean, that's the sad part.
Yeah,
and there
sad.
are a lot of scientists who, have written papers and their life is based on this, paradigm. I can't, this has been years ago since I've read this. I can't remember the name of the scientist. But she was a professor at a university in Mexico City, and she was doing a dig and discovered the remains of a village that she dated back 45,000 years ago.
Wow. Well,
at the time, this was in the 70s, and at the time, the accepted across the board timeline for human beings to be in the Americas was 13,000 years ago, the Clovis people coming over on the land bridge. So if she dated this in Mexico at 45,000 years ago, she lost her job.
Right.
Because of that. Later, people, redated that and they're like, wait, she was right. But I mean, it was too late for her.
Yeah. How sad is that? That is just so sad to me that it holds us back from understanding and learning.
Yep.
And accepting that things may not be the way we thought they were. That just holds us back so much. And that just makes me so sad because there is so much out there that we don't understand. And I feel like just because now Todd and I are paranormal investigators. When we investigate, I'm also a medium. I use a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I put the two together. And that's how I form my investigation is I use science with my equipment and I use my personal experiences. And I can't even imagine not being able to use both, to put them together to make my whole investigation.
But Sandy, there's a lot of people that there's a comfort in not knowing. There's a comfort in not wanting to know. Because, again, there is change involved with that. Jason, I got to tell you, talking to you is like when I was a kid and Leonard Nimoy would come on with In Search Of. That's what this is like for me. Like, it's so exciting to hear you talk about this stuff because we've never talked to anybody on this podcast who's this open and willing to talk about all this stuff before. It's really exciting. So you're like my Leonard Nimoy tonight, just so you know.
You have no idea what kind of a high praise that is for me. I grew up with that show.
Absolutely.
So did I. That was my first step into the unexplained and cryptozoology and the paranormal world. I have the full DVD set sitting on the shelf behind me. I do.
I love you.
Well, and with me, it wasn't just the subject matter, which I just loved. It was the fact that it was Spock talking about it.
I can imagine. You're right. Yeah, and everything about the show is right. The music was perfect, all that kind of stuff.
Everything was perfect.
So what makes, going back a little bit to the cryptozoology side of it, what these legends that are born and get carried on, what makes them develop? Some of them do seem silly. Some of these quote unquote monsters do seem very silly. How do they sort of keep going up to the next level over the years and get passed down? Do you think it's sort of like a game of telephone? They sort of get lost in translation over the years?
Well, some yes. Some that were developed in the 1800s. The newspapers in the 1800s were highly, highly sensationalized. And they just made up all sorts of BS.
Yeah.
And those became legends. But going back, there are so many legends that we ignore that occasionally we find out that they were true. I'm fascinated by little people.
Yeah.
All right, there are little people stories all over the place. In throughout Europe, they're basically the same creatures, but they're called in different places: tomtars, kobolds, trolls, elves, fairies, brownies, sprites, leprechauns. All of these things, basically the descriptions are the same. And funny enough, they're the same as little people descriptions here in North America. Right. And when I was compiling Chasing American Monsters, I was absolutely blown away with the fact that the Pukwudgies from around Massachusetts and Connecticut and that, up in that area, which they're 2 to 3 foot tall. They can turn invisible. They can create fire. They have poisonous arrows, and they're mischievous.
Right.
There are in northern New York, I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I can't think of the name of the little people legends, but they're the same. They're also, the exact same legends in Illinois. The Osage Indians in Missouri had the exact same stories. Exact same stories were in South Dakota. As a matter of fact, in the journals of Lewis and Clark, they wrote about going to a place called Spirit Mound in South Dakota in search of these little people with these magical arrows.
Right.
Why are these all over the place?
Right. Again, I say, how does everybody have a story? Even in the 1800s, even before that, how does everybody have a story? Right.
And let's take a step further than that. In the island of Flores in Indonesia, there were legends of what were called, the locals called the Ebu Gogo, which meant grandmother who eats everything. And it was a story of 2 to 3 foot tall people who would sneak into villages, steal children to eat them.
Oh, I'd be all about that.
And of course, Western science who went over there thought, oh, this is hilarious. This is a really cute legend, until they found this cave with a race of people who were about 2 and 3 foot tall. And they were full grown adults. They even gave them the name Homo florensis as a separate species of people. So science has said that they actually existed, and they gave them the nickname the Hobbits, because this was back when the Lord of the Rings movies came out. Sure. That they actually discovered this. So again, like the Billy Ape, here was a local legend that was true.
That's wild. I haven't even heard that story. That's amazing. Now I have to go look that up. But it's just fascinating to me that so many people from so many different cultures around the world still have stories of and experiences of things that are basically the same.
Right. Look at ghosts. What culture around the planet doesn't have ghosts and spirits as part of their belief system?
Right.
They all do, everyone. What group of people around the world has a creation story that involves someone coming down from the heavens?
Right.
Right.
They all do.
Yep.
They all do.
There's got to be something to all of this.
Go ahead, Todd.
We just think we're too smart.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I think that, especially in Western culture, we've gotten so far away from connecting our spirituality, our lives with the earth. You talk a lot about indigenous people. I mean, they were connected to the land, the earth, nature, all that kind of stuff. We kind of moved away from that. And I think the more we move away from that, the less we're willing to believe and understand like we should. You know, like you said, science is great, but we're always learning there too. We're always learning new things along the way. And you can say, well, there's only so many planets today. What if we find one tomorrow? Then what? You know?
Right. You know, when I was a kid, there were 9 planets in this solar system, and we didn't know of any outside the solar system. And now we know thousands of planets outside our solar system.
Right.
And for some reason, we now have 8. But anyway.
I was just going to say, Pluto in my mind is still a planet. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, me too. I'm
period.
old school.
Right. But I mean, I love science so much. It has given us so many things. But you're right about nature. My gosh, there are so many studies that show you live longer, you're happier, your stress levels are lower, you're healthier if you just go walk in the woods for a half hour a week.
Right.
In South Korea a few years ago, businesses, I don't know if they still do this, I assume they do, but I read an article about businesses were giving their employees leave to go just walk around in the trees.
I love it.
So do I. I mean, how does that not make somebody more peaceful?
I know.
I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea. And all it is just us reconnecting with something we should never have been disconnected from.
You just had a little kitty walk behind you. What's your cat's name?
No, that was Spike.
That's Spike. Okay.
I forgot when my husband was coming in, I'll take this out. My husband was coming in to try and help me get this set up. He let the dog in, and I closed the door, and the dog was still in here, but he's been sleeping. Then my cat came in and opened the door, and now everybody's in here. So I'll take that out. But anyways, so Jason, let me ask you this too. Now, Todd's in Wisconsin, and one of my favorite stories out of Wisconsin is, of course, the Beast of Bray Road. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that legend, that story? And do you know how that originated or how long ago that originated?
Well, somebody came into, I don't remember the name of the newspaper, with a report. They were driving along Bray Road, which is in southern rural Wisconsin, and they saw what looked like a large dog in the road eating a piece of roadkill. And when they pulled up closer, it stood up on its hind legs on 2 feet. And it was about 6 to 7 feet tall, and it stood like a man, but it was a dog or something wolf-like. And it walked off into the corn and just disappeared from the car. And the person went and reported it to the sheriff's department. Well, there's a reporter named Linda Godfrey who, when she was getting the police reports, the sheriff, for some reason, told her this. And that fascinated her. And she was like, do you have any more? And he's like, I have a whole folder of these reports. And they were all extremely similar. Right. And since the Beast of Bray Road stories have come out nationally, there's been an explosion of Dogmen sightings.
Yeah.
In Michigan, there were quite a few. I know of 2 in Missouri. I interviewed 2 people who had them. Talked to someone in Illinois, someone in Arizona, and they're all really, really similar. It's a canine that is usually on all fours. It's really big, a large dog, but then it stands up on its hind legs.
Yeah.
Sometimes it acts threatening. Sometimes it just walks off the side of the road and goes away.
Very interesting to me. We were just up there visiting Todd in September, and it was a little bit west of where we were. It was going to be quite a drive, but I've always wanted to just check it out and see. I'm the kind of person I have to go to a place. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I find interesting is Skinwalker Ranch. And I'm fascinated by Skinwalker Ranch because you have all kinds of things going on there. You have the paranormal, you have cryptozoology, you have aliens, you have just about everything that we could talk about on this episode tonight in one place. Mm-hmm. Have you done any research into Skinwalker Ranch or any information there?
No, it's. I've read about it. About it, and it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. Geographically.
Yeah.
So I haven't been there. I don't know. I'm fascinated by the stories. I was really fascinated by especially the story of the
bulls.
Dire wolf.
Oh yeah, the dire wolf.
The dire wolf really fascinated me. But I have a rule, and if I interview somebody and they've seen a ghost and I can tell that, they're really serious about it, I'll believe that you saw a ghost, or at least you really believe you do. The same with somebody with a Bigfoot encounter or UFOs. But if somebody has seen a ghost, has a portal in their living room, has been aboard a UFO, has communicated with Bigfoot with their mind and given JFK a back rub in the last, 2 years.
Right.
I really doubt it. And that when it comes to Skinwalker Ranch, although I'm really fascinated by it, there's just way too much stuff going on. It seems a little bit too good to be true.
You're 100% correct. And then you throw in the Native Americans who are sort of tied to the whole thing, because a lot of their beliefs and a lot of their stories and their legends are sort of tied into some of the things that you hear about going on there. And there's a lot of Native Americans in the area who won't even step foot in that kind of a place. I just find it really interesting. You're 100% correct. I mean, you could pick anything, and any form of the paranormal world or any legend, and they have it there. Mm-hmm. And either they're all tied together somehow, or it is too good to be true. So it's
the all tied together. I'm glad you brought that up, because I have been trying to wrap my head around that for a long, long time.
Me too.
Because there are so many things like ghosts, demonic entities, shadow people, even aliens. If you start praying at them, they tend to leave you alone. Mm-hmm. Now, why in the heck would all of these disconnected entities react the same way to the same thing?
I was going to ask you about that before, like how much of this is connected in some way, shape, or form that, we just haven't discovered
yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah. I mean, that's why I talked earlier about, I like the nuts and bolts craft idea because it makes sense. I like the flesh and blood Bigfoot because it makes sense. But there are so many things that are interconnected that make me question that.
Yeah. It's a lot. It is so much. Just at Skinwalker Ranch, you think about, you've got people saying, well, the dire wolf is interdimensional because, he can come and go and you don't see him 1 second, then you see him the next second, and he'll show up on the other side of the property, and they've seen Bigfoot on the property and he comes and goes. And what in the world? I mean, the Native Americans won't even discuss skinwalkers. They're afraid to say the word skinwalker. They're afraid to talk about it because of the fact that they truly believe that it will take out its revenge on them for discussing it. A lot of them won't even say anything.
Well, having read a lot about the Skinwalker legends and about what they supposedly are, I wouldn't want to talk about them either.
No,
right.
no,
It's right.
it's true.
I even said the word.
It's true. It's true, Todd. You should see some of these Native American people, the indigenous people who are interviewed, and they just won't say a word, and you can see the fear in their eyes. I don't know what's going on there, but I'll tell you, if we could even get a smidgen of knowledge about the truth, I think it would blow all of our minds.
See, to me, this is where I say I want to stay safe. I want to stay in my comfort zone. I don't want to know. Like for me, even for me, somebody who's interested in a lot of stuff, there is a line where I think my mind would blow up and it would ooze out my ears. So I don't want to go any farther than that. So,
you know what, Todd, and I'm right there with you. I love reading about stuff. I love studying. I love interviewing people about their experiences. And I've had some paranormal things happen to me, and I believe that the paranormal is really, really fun as long as it's happening to somebody else.
Yep. No, I mean, and that's true. I mean, I've kind of taken a step back after having something follow me home and all that kind of stuff too. Like you really
Dude,
do.
That happened to me.
Yeah.
I used to write about demonic entities and ghosts and all that stuff. Something followed me home. So after that, whenever I write about the paranormal, it's cryptozoology or time travel. I'm not messing with anything else.
Yep. It really was not necessarily a slap in the face, because I think I knew there was always a chance, but until it happens, I think you have a bigger respect, not only for that experience and that part of paranormal, but I think it opens your eyes to, well, if this could happen to me, then maybe this story can be true as well. And that can be true. And then, I mean,
what hit me hard, and it was affecting me a little bit, and that was bothering me, but not enough, to really make me change. My son, who was 5 at the time, started complaining of something, and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
No, I'm done.
Yeah. When it gets to on that personal level, we go into investigations, and I am very, very careful, obviously, but it becomes very personal when someone you care about is experiencing something.
Right.
And it changes the entire way you look at everything. I totally agree with you.
Yep. Now, there was, when you were talking about Skinwalker Ranch, one of the things that popped into my head, which really makes a lot of sense to me, it's something that John Keel wrote about, window areas. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because there are places, and like Skinwalker Ranch very well could be one of these window areas. Point Pleasant, West Virginia could be one of those.
Right.
There's a spots in Pennsylvania. There are spots in other places that an excessive amount of different types of paranormal encounters happen. And what he said with window areas is that the veil between the worlds is extremely thin, and things come in and out.
Sure.
And some places seem to have more than normal. So I'm not entirely poo-pooing Skinwalker Ranch.
Right.
I mean, I'm saying I question it, but all that stuff could have happened there.
I'm in the same boat as you. It's very possible that all of this is going on. I think it's just mostly because we've never heard of a place that's literally a one-stop shop for everything. I mean, it's like you want to see a ghost, go to Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. You want to see crypto, go to Skinwalker Ranch.
It's like one of those bad commercials. One of the bad commercials.
Exactly.
We say this in radio.
I'm looking at it. It's like the 7-Eleven. It's like paranormal. All they need is an icy machine.
Everything you want. I'm sure it's set up at the gate. If that's why I think the biggest reason that it fascinates me. I heard speaking of the veil, I heard a really cool theory years ago that ghosts are actually our dimension and another dimension. They're not really ghosts, that they're people living their lives in another dimension. And when the veil gets extremely thin, we can see each other. Sort of like the movie The Others.
Now, I wrote, back in 2009, I wrote a book called Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us. And that's one of the explanations that I gave of shadow people. is that it's probably, it very well could be where two, worlds are so close, they might just be people doing whatever they're doing on the other side of the line. It's just all we can see is their shadows.
Don't you love that idea that, like, regardless of whether it may seem far-fetched to somebody or it may make perfect sense or it sounds crazy, I just love that thought process because we're thinking, we're coming up with possibilities. And I just love that idea that maybe it isn't always a spirit, somebody who's passed on. Maybe it's somebody living their life in another world. And we're just fortunate enough, privy to see what's going on. And just like that little boy, Jason, you both just saw each other.
Right. He was doing his thing and you were doing yours, and boom.
Yeah.
He might have peed himself in his other dimension.
Now, here's a question. Did you?
Yeah, as we do. You said something, Sandy, about maybe. You said the word maybe. And I love the word maybe because everything we're talking about, everything I've talked about, we haven't tried to give a definitive answer of this is this.
Right.
Okay. And whenever somebody's discussing the paranormal and they're like, this entity is this thing, or they're wrong.
Todd,
nobody knows. We don't know any of this stuff for sure. All any of us are doing are speculating.
That's right. This is Todd's biggest pet peeve that you just talked about right there.
I don't care how long you've done investigating, whatever. When you say this is who we're talking to, this is what's going on, we don't know. Even if it seems that that's the way it is, we don't know for sure. And so if you can say this is what may be happening, this is what I perceive as happening, I'm good with that. But the minute somebody says there's no doubt that we're talking with fill in the blank, you're gone. You're done with me. I can't deal with that.
100%. No, you can't. Because you know what? Even if, somebody's saying, yes, okay, I'm channeling Abraham Lincoln. And he's told me all these things about Abraham Lincoln. And I looked it up, in a history book. I didn't know any of this stuff, but it was right. Somebody might have just been lying to you, man.
Yep.
Somebody who knew about Abe. Because there's entities out there who know lots of things.
Yep.
Unless Sasquatch comes up, knocks on my door with a goodie basket and says, hey, let's go have some lunch. I can't say for sure that there is a Sasquatch. Yeah. I can say that I truly, like you do, I truly believe that the people who saw what they saw do believe that they saw what they saw.
Yep.
If he does show up with a basket, will you do me a favor and get a nice, clean picture of him, and so it's not grainy with him walking in the woods?
I've interviewed a couple of people who've told me that they've seen a Sasquatch carrying a basket in the woods. I am dead serious.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. They like baskets.
We're gonna get ready to kind of wrap things up here. We will on the front side and back side, we'll edit this all together, and we're gonna give all the links to your social media and all that kind of stuff. But to wrap it up, what's next for you? I mean, you've got all these books out there. You're doing all this research. You are just an excellent guest to have on. I could sit and talk to you for hours and actually not even ask questions, just listen to you talk.
I know.
What's next for you?
I had a great time, man. I love talking to both of you. This was, I gauge interviews on whether it seems like an interview or it seems like I'm just sitting around, across from somebody at a kitchen table, having a cup of coffee and BSing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what it felt like with you two. It was great.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. Would you come back?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
Oh, great.
What's next for you? What do you want to work? What are you going to be working on next beyond now? Like, what's ahead for you?
All right. The last few books I've written, apart from Chasing American Monsters, which is a cryptozoology book, I've written a couple of novels. My last novel just came out on January 11th. It's called The Girl in the Corn. It's a horror novel. And my publisher liked it so much, I was asked a week and a half ago to write the sequel. So I'm working on that right now.
That's great. That's great. We'd love to have you come back and talk about that book, too. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. Just whenever you guys want me, let me know. You guys were so much fun to talk to. I'd love to come back. This was
great. It's great to talk to like-minded people who actually get your point of view and you can do back and forth so easily. So thank you so much for joining us.
I agree. And you know what? I've spoke conferences, paranormal conferences, and I've gotten emails and talked. There are a lot of intelligent, thoughtful people in the paranormal community. And then there are some other ones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
it's true.
I'm really happy talking to you two.
Well, we're very happy talking to you too.
Well, I'm definitely going to go turn on some In Search Of after this and just get my little fix off that now. Jason, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Have a great night.
Good night.
You too.
This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
So part 2's done. That conversation with Jason done, but I really hope that if not this season, next season, we can get him back and do some more. Maybe pick 1 or 2 specific areas of cryptids or whatever and kind of really delve into those because there's so many weird stories.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And we really just kind of scratched the surface on his book, Chasing American Monsters, which I love his book. It is so great. If anybody gets a chance, go buy that book. If you're the least little bit interested in cryptozoology, buy that book.
So
if you just are interested in stories and legends, that's a great book for that too.
I have to tell you this because it kind of ties into the whole talk that we talked about with aliens and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So I go to my, and you know me, I don't want to talk to people. But I go in for my physical therapy, and I'm sitting there, and it's winter here in Wisconsin, and I go in shorts so that I don't have to take off a pair of pants to do, all the crap they make you do and whatever. Right. So I'm sitting there, and my knee is out. It's not covered with anything, and you can see the scar and all the nasty bits and stuff. And a guy comes in. He's apparently got an appointment with a different physical therapist, and he comes in, and the first thing he does is start bitching that somebody didn't chip out all the ice out of the parking lot at the physical therapy. It's one of those people, right? Mm-hmm. He's the kind of person where when the physical therapist came to get me, how you doing? Pretty good, not bad. How are you? That's how I respond. Right. They came out to get him, and they're like, how are you doing? Well, my back is a little sore yet. That kind of thing.
Yes. Yep.
So at any rate, I'm sitting there, and he starts talking to me, right?
Oh, no.
And then what he brings up, what he said to me was, boy, hope everything goes well with your knee. And I said, yeah, it'll be fine. I said, at least it wasn't 100 years ago or 200 years ago where they'd have to chop off the knee and give me a peg leg, right? So I'm trying to be funny with him, hoping he'd just shut up at that point. But he didn't. And he goes, well, there's a lot of science out there. You can just about imagine all those aliens and stuff. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, here we go. And sure enough, he started talking about aliens. And I'm sitting there thinking, Matthew, who is my physical therapist, Matthew, get out here and get me now.
That's the life of an empath. I can't go anywhere without that happening.
All those reports in the skies up there, the military sees them, and now regular people are seeing them too. And then I say something like, well, and that's if there's aliens and stuff like that, we don't need to be worrying about fighting between nations. We got to worry about us as a collective. Well, you're right about that. Oh, God, get me out of here.
You know what I would have done? I would have whipped out one of our business card things and said, we're just doing an episode. You should listen.
Listen, this guy watches TV by putting in his dentures and hoping he picks up some sort of stray voltage from some TV station someplace. He's not going to be able to tune into a podcast.
Oh, that's great.
Well, the back is hurting a little bit.
It's hard. I can't go to a doctor's appointment. I had a woman follow me from the elevator. Believe it or not, she had an appointment with my doctor. This was before the telehealth days. Followed me from the elevator because I said hello to her.
Well, that's your problem. Don't do that.
I know. And she followed me in there, sat down right next to me. And you know me, I like my space. I sit purposely away from everybody when I go someplace. No, she had to, in a lot of ways, the pandemic was a godsend for me because we had to have chairs 6 feet apart. So, but that doesn't stop people sometimes. So, I've been there. I know. God. I don't think I had anybody like him, though. He's a character.
Oh, he was a character. All right.
That's awesome.
When I'm praying that the physical therapist comes and beats my ass back there with my leg and stuff like that, just so I can get away from somebody, he must really be an issue. So,
Aw.
well, all right. It was a good podcast again this week. Always a lot of fun to see you.
Always.
Glad it's over. And
He's such a jerk.
happy birthday to me. So
Happy birthday to you. I love you.
okay, till next time. Well, let's go through the whole spiel. Make sure and like us and all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Do
all
your
right,
thing.
let's do it. All right, make sure you like our Facebook page, The Sandy and Toddcast. We also have a great group called Stay Weirdos, Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast. A whole bunch of people in there just having a good time, laughing, and getting into some cool discussions. And it's just a safe space. You can think, feel, give your opinion, do whatever you'd like to do, and nobody's going to judge you there. And that's what I love about it so much, like a tight-knit family. So join that group. Make sure to give us a follow on our Empathicary podcast Facebook page and our Mind Garden Media Facebook page. And just make sure that you leave us a review, download us, follow us, all that good stuff on all of your platforms where you find the Sandy and Toddcast.
All right, her spiel is done. It's time to say goodbye for the Sandy and Toddcast. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.